and the installation makes a parallel between the official definition of what is a museum and what is the role that indigenous territories have in comparison to those definitions, because everything is there. Museums and indigenous territories they bring together the past and possibilities of the future. They safeguard heritage for all people and future generations. They are not for profit. So the installation is a provocation for us to rethink, do we need to create new buildings? Do we need to have museums in big cities? Or actually, we have it all there, but we are looking at maybe at a different direction. Is a museum more useful for climate action than an indigenous territory? I think that is the central question. Is it?
Yeah.
I'm confident that it's not. And I think this is the provocation. And it's a crazy idea, but it's the intention behind is to inspire other museum professionals to rethink their practices, because the practices of indigenous work in museums is very often deeply problematic. And it's a call for the museum sector, for museums and creative practitioners, curators, to actually engage in the fight of those local communities for their lands, for their rights. I think we can be better allies of those communities if we had a deeper connection and a deeper relationship with those communities.
Okay, hi everyone. This is the Ignoramus Guide to Surviving Humanity. I'm Wei Chan. This is my co-host Ileana Chan.
Hi.
And we have here my dear friend Thiago Jesus. Am I pronouncing it right? I never say your surname.
Yes.
It is Jesus. It's not Jesus, is it?
It's not Jesus. Well, it can be anything, to be honest. It's it's a world famous name, right? So you can call in any way. Yeah.
People really do call you Jesus, though.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it because when we were in like a festival together, we ordered, I believe, like ice cream or drinks or something like that, and then you give your name, and then the guy couldn't find you, so he just shouted like Jesus, Jesus, and everyone was kind of looking. It was like good fun.
Yeah, it's good. It's good when I have to book tables at restaurants, because I always Jesus, and oh my God, and you're ready. It's always easier to get a reservation. Yeah, never for 12 people.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I mean, look, you are my personal Lord and Savior, I have to say, and a bit of a hero. So we really wanted to get you on the podcasts because we've been covering a lot about Southeast Asia. We also interviewed people from Southeast Asian tribes or with a background in Southeast Asian tribes. And we have never covered the amazing work that you do with indigenous tribes in Brazil, the Kuikuro, the Xingu?
The Kuikuro, yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Did you like my pronunciation there? You just
very
like
good
pronunciation. Yeah. Kuikuro.
You're nailing it.
Kuikuro?
The Kuikuro.
That sounds Japanese, huh?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I speak Japanese. That's why it could be. Well, like the artist name is Takuma, which is
Takuma. Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's there is a male name in Japan called
really
Takuma. Yeah.
Wow.
So Takuma is the artist that you worked on to do like several documentaries. Yes.
So Takuma he's an indigenous filmmaker from this community that we mentioned, Kuikuro, and so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Kuikuro and then I go into Takuma. So the Kuikuro are an indigenous community in Brazil of around 650 people. They live in 6 different villages inside the Xingu Indigenous Territory. The Xingu Indigenous Territory is a very big indigenous land that was demarcated by the Brazilian government in 1961. And there are the Kuikuro living there and also 15 other indigenous groups. So there's a total of about 7,000 people, indigenous people living in that territory. It's a very big territory. It's the size of Belgium, to give you an idea. And yes, and one of them is the Kuikuro. And Takuma is an indigenous filmmaker that we met in 2014, and he's an artist, he's an activist, he's an indigenous researcher that uses filmmaking and the practice of making films and cinema to document aspects of the culture of his community. So his work he does is sort of twofold. So he learned how to make cinema and how to use the camera so he could document the traditional knowledge of his community that is disappearing over time. And at the same time, so he creates films and documents and registers of rituals, of dances, of practices, so he can document and sort of create a digital library of everything that makes that community unique and that is valuable for them. So there is that work that he does, and at the same time, he started using cinema and filmmaking as a way also of raising awareness of the local struggles of his community and other communities in the Xingu indigenous territory as well. So it's both a tool of preservation and a weapon of resistance, of creating visibility for those communities in the region. To clarify for people who are listening, I'll just go back to the relationship with Takuma, because I think it's important to let people know how we got to where we are as well, because we met Takuma in 2014, and we were producing a visit to the Amazon for the production of a play in the UK about the Amazon. And then we met Takuma there, and we commissioned him, we invited him to come to London to do a documentary about London from an indigenous perspective. And so he came, and he created this really interesting, funny film called London as a Village.
London as a Village.
And London as a Village.
It's a short documentary about London and Londoners and the tribes that he found in London for his community. So it's a film that it's partly in Portuguese, part in his native language in Carib, and it was really interesting because it was made for his community and not for our audience. Really refreshing for us to see London through a different perspective. It's really refreshing to see, what actually interested him when he arrived here. It was his first trip abroad. So he came to do this film in London. And while he was here, he told us he wanted to create, he envisioned the idea or the opportunity to create an exchange program between indigenous and non-indigenous artists. He was like, look, this is what I'm doing here. This is how amazing this experience is. I would love to have other indigenous artists from my community, from different communities, to have a similar experience. And I would also love to have artists that have never been to the Amazon, that don't know about indigenous fight or indigenous cultures, to come to my house, to my territory, to our land, and to produce something as well in a equal partnership way, in collaboration way. So we co-created with him during that visit the shaping of a program, a residency program in the Xingu, so that we could invite artists from the UK, and other countries as well, Brazil, UK, and other countries as well, to collaborate with him in his work of documenting the Kuikuro culture.
So Takuma brought the news to us here that brought this project, the artistic residency project here, with people's projects. And we said yes, very good.
Então, a gente está aqui para esperar vocês.
So we are here to welcome you, to host you.
He's he knows how to do filmmaking. He's a filmmaker, and then we thought what we together we were thinking what kind of expertise or technologies would be new for them in the community that could take, that could enhance his skills and the community as well. So and art forms or languages. I'm gonna say languages and technologies and expertise. I'm trying to find the right word to encompass everything, but methodologies that were participatory, that could involve people in the community to participate, and that would allow the indigenous communities, the indigenous artists, to be the leading agents in the process of exchange, not the passive receivers of what was going to happen during the residency. And he loved that idea. Mm-hmm. And we started fundraising. Takuma built a traditional house. This is brilliant because, in the community, they live in like a big circle, and there are like these massive family houses. They have this traditional architecture technology of building them.
It had a name, didn't it? In the documentary.
Yeah, it's called OCA. OCA is how we call indigenous houses. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
They call it house.
They just call it a house. It just means house. Yeah,
house.
It just means house.
This is my house. Okay. Yeah. He thought the best way for us to do that is we have to build a house for these artists to live in the village with us. So the community built a traditional house in the middle of the circle with everyone's house. Mm-hmm. And that house became a artist residency center where everyone that would go would be there, stay there, and the community would come and go and work from there. And it became a huge community center in the end. It was fantastic. And we produced, between 2017 and 2018, 3 visits to 3 residencies. All of them had 15 days because we were it was like 15 days of immersion in the village, working together with the indigenous artists. And for groups of 10 artists each, there were 30 non-indigenous artists in total. And people that we invited were, set designers, photogrammetry experts, sound designers, writers, virtual reality developers, everything that we considered, that we thought together with him that would add another layer of expertise to what he wanted to achieve as an artist. So everyone came with the intention. Nobody was paid to do that. It was all free. Not free, we had support. It all happened because we were funded by the research councils in the UK, but it wasn't like an open call, or it wasn't like it was properly curated, because we understand that there was a huge impact having 15 artists, a community that lives isolated in the forest, having 10 artists coming to spend 15 days there with different technology. It has a massive impact on the daily life of the community. So we had to curate people by their expertise, by the technologies, by their sense of collaboration, about their interest in spending, in having that experience there. And it was all very new. It was a huge experiment for us. So in each of these residencies, we sort of tried a different approach, or there was always like a purpose. We would go on a visit, and we would together meet the community at the center of the village. And then the artists would introduce themselves to the community. We would show what they're doing, show films, drawings, and then the community would come and suggest things. And then together during these 15 days, they would create something together, work together. And it was fantastic. It's like changed my life. That experience is
Wow.
It stays with you forever. I mean, it's so
Forever.
almost a month each time. And
Yeah.
I just, one thing that stuck out when you told me about it, like when you first went years ago, is that it's very, very difficult to get there. Very difficult. Tell us about the journey.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not.
Remote village.
It's not difficult, but it's. Yeah, well, so for me, flying London, Rio, or São Paulo, and then you take another flight to Brasilia. So it's an 11-hour flight here to Rio. That was my journey, 11 hours. And then stay in Rio, and then you take another flight 3 hours to Brasilia, which is the capital of the country. And then from Brasilia, you have to take a bus that goes for 17 hours on a road. So you sleep on this bus 17 hours, and then you get to a city called Canarana, which is in another state of the country. And this is the last sort of city outside the indigenous territory. And then you sleep there. It's a small agricultural rural city. And from this city, you have to, it depends on the season. So if it's in the rainy season, you have to take a car around 4 hours by car, and then you get to the edge of the river, and then you take a boat, and then it's like 8 hours on a boat, and then you get to the port of the community, and then you take a motorbike, whatever they have available there, a truck, and then you get into the village. If it's dry season, because the seasons there are very well divided. So there's the rainy season, which starts in September. Well, it's changing now because of climate change, but it starts in September and it goes until April. That's when it rains every day. And then it's dry season. It doesn't rain any single day from April until September. So the beginning and the end of those seasons were the right moments. We discovered were the best moments for us to do this residency. So we always did the residency in May and one around September. Yeah. And so it was, and when it was a dry season, then you can drive through the forest because the communities have built roads connecting their villages to the city, because lots of those indigenous, those people, they have jobs in the city, they work, or go to hospital, visit relatives, work, go to the bank. They live in this ongoing exchange between the very traditional life in the community and also having a door to a non-indigenous life 6 hours away by by motorbike or by car. So it is a long journey. It's not difficult, it's just long.
Long.
Yeah.
So
and one of the, sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask if the work that they did, the artwork, is available for us to see.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well.
Okay.
So that was actually what I was going to bring, because from these residencies, one of the important things to mention about the residencies as well is that the residencies were not just in the village. Every residency that we did was in the village and in the city. So we were taking, for example, we would take 10 non-indigenous artists to the Xingu. We would take 10 indigenous artists to Rio, to São Paulo, not to London 10 because it would be too expensive to bring that. But Takuma, and always we every year we brought Takuma and an artist with him to London, and we would do a group of indigenous artists in Rio in museums and galleries there. So this residency was two-folded because it was an attempt to get this experience that was reciprocal, as equitative as possible. So we would bring artists from the periphery of Rio to the Xingu, and we would take indigenous artists to those favelas in Rio as well to experience something completely new and to create new work based on those settings in those favelas as well, or in London or in Madrid, or wherever we were taking them. So it was always about that, producing something that was for the community, that was responding the needs of the community, the desires of the community, of safeguarding their culture, of raising awareness, international awareness, finding new languages to talk about issues, developing new skills for the community. So there are lots of, different desires, generate money for the community as well. There were lots of desires there that we were trying to achieve with that experience. And when I say making money, it's important to say that no work was commercial. So all of the work belongs to the community. Everything that was created in those residences belong. They have the Kuikuro have intellectual property of that work. No, they are not for sale or anything. But we had exhibitions, we have events, and if there was money made out of those displays or exhibits or events, they would all go to the Indigenous Association. So it was a really interesting way to support the community in dialoguing with the state of art, what people are doing outside of creating a platform of dialogue between Indigenous artists and world-renowned artists, and I think this is what, and we talking about the artworks, as you said, everything that was created, and we managed to, we had everyone that went to the residency was really invested in showcasing that work in a sort of international platform. So because people were so invested in collaborating, participating, they developed such a solid partnership with the community that it became something that they carry on with the work. So we had exhibitions and displays of this work at Tate Modern. We had an exhibition at the Horniman Museum.
You did, yeah.
There were, yeah, you went, I think.
Yeah.
So there were exhibitions in New York, in Madrid, of course, in Rio, in São Paulo, and so it was fantastic to see how those three experiences actually created I would say, an alliance of artists and cultural practitioners that became really invested in supporting those exchanges. And these people make every effort to have that work available to different audiences, and they became, they are talking about it. They are speakers person for those communities, and they are connecting us to other artists doing work. It's just growing, and the work that we are doing right now are all consequence of those connections that we have been doing before. So we have 4 projects. So the first one that we opened in May, we have an installation at the Central Pavilion at the Venice Biennale. The Biennale was postponed because of the COVID. So, and it has affected our plans. We were planning to actually build a house, a traditional house in the main pavilion at the Biennale. But because of the COVID, because we had to rethink the way that we were using those resources that we had available to respond to the community needs during the pandemic. So we had to rethink our participation. And we have now a video installation that is a collaboration between Takuma and Gringo Cardia, who is one of Brazil's leading art directors. And he was one of the resident artists in the Shin Group. So he was invited to participate in the Biennale. And when he learned the theme of the Biennale is how we will live together. And then he said, there's no work for me to do here. We have to bring the indigenous work. There's no future for humanity if we don't live in coexistence with nature, if we're talking about architecture, if we are rethinking our human relationship with the environment. So he used his platform to bring Takuma, and they produced a film that is showcased in the main pavilion of the Biennale. And it's like a celebration of indigenous ways of living.
The installation is called OCA RED, Living Beyond the End of the World. And it's an installation created by an indigenous filmmaker called Takuma Kuikuro. He's from the Kuikuro indigenous communities in the Xingu territory in the Amazon rainforest. And it's a collaboration with Gringo Cardia, who is one of Brazil's leading designers and architects, and an arts research center in London called People's Policy Projects. And the installation is an invitation to the public of the Biennale to engage with the indigenous ways of living together collectively and in harmony with nature. So the installation tries to answer the central question of the Biennale: how will we live together? Because we truly believe that these indigenous communities, they have the answer to these questions for thousands of years, which is the way that they connect with nature, the way that they live collectively, and the way that they see nature as an extension of their own lives.
That opened another door for us in Venice as well, because we have been, I'm so happy about that, but we have been invited to contribute to the installation that Olafur Eliasson has at the Biennale.
Oh my God.
Yeah! Yeah, so
No!
I know, yeah, it's insane. So this is like how things escalate, you know.
So you
And
met him?
no, I'm hoping I will meet him in November if I go
Yeah.
there in the last week of November. When I went to the Biennale, made to the opening, I had everything ready. Like I rehearsed in the mirror what I'm gonna say to Olafur. I'm gonna meet him. He's my, you know, but he wasn't there.
God.
Can you explain to me the ignoramus? What is the significance of this artist? Like,
Oh,
why?
Olafur is, I think, I'm gonna talk about my personal views on Olafur. I think he's the most important contemporary artist that we have in the moment. I think he's like the Leonardo da Vinci of our times, and I think that I suggest you Google his work. But I think what is most impressive about him is that I think he was the first artist in a global, the profile that he has, that managed to translate and materialize what the climate crisis is with that work of the icebergs, bringing the icebergs in to the city of Paris during the COP in Paris, where there was the Paris Agreement, which is the most important agreement for treaty for climate crisis. And I think he's the guy that has this incredible social work. He translates really well the social work with the his contemporary practice, with light, with forms and shapes and sounds and colors. I think, and people in the UK probably know him really well because of The Sun that was at Tate Modern in 2005, maybe. Yeah, so Olafur was invited to do this, one of the main installations at the Venice Biennale, and he created it collaboratively. So he invited some of the exhibitors, people who were showcasing their work in the Biennale, to donate an object and a video to his work. And Takuma recorded a video of the Kwarupi, which is the main ritual of all the communities in the Xingu. It's an annual celebration that brings together 8 different communities to celebrate the passing, to mark the passing of the people who have died that year, to end the sadness. So it's it's a 3-day ritual. And in the first day, everyone arrives. On the second day, they cry the passing of the people, and they celebrate them. And then it's the end of crying. They cry, and then nobody can cry anymore because you have to release that spirit to nature. And then the third day is the rebirth of the spirit in nature. So it's a party, it's a celebration where everybody dances, and they do the uka uka fight, which I spoke before in the film that he recorded. And at the center of the Kwarupi, there is a trunk. So the people who passed, they decorate, they bring some trunks from the forest, they decorate those trunks with objects, personal objects of that person, like the headpieces, their necklaces, personal items, and they decorate that trunk. They celebrate, they cry, they mourn around that trunk. And when the sadness is over, they take that trunk and they release it into the water, in the river, because it's like they in their cosmology, was created from the trunk. The man was carved in the trunk, and when he dies, they decorate the trunk so he goes back into nature. It's like a passing of going back to nature, of of rebirthing in nature. Yeah, so it's a beautiful way of thinking about death, of thinking about grieving, about how we are connected. You know, humans and nature are connected. And I think it's interesting to think, you know, in a post-pandemic world, we are not there in a post-pandemic world, but in a pandemic world, it's really interesting to think about those connections and the joy of grieving that those communities have as well. So that is part of Olafur's installation now in Venice as well. So there are these two installations there at the Venice Biennale. The Biennale closes now on the 21st of November. So yeah, but you can find some information. There's a video. There are some interviews on the Biennale's website. If you can't go to Venice, you know how difficult it is for people to travel. The second work that we have on at the moment is in Glasgow, that also opened in June and July. And that is my work with Takuma, my first artwork myself. I'm, as I'm a producer and a creative practitioner and researcher, but it's the first time that I actually created something in collaboration with Takuma. And it's an installation for an exhibition called Reimagining Museums for Climate Action, which is at the Glasgow Science Centre. So it's part of the Blue Zone. It opened in May, and it's going to be on until the end of COP, which I think is on the 12th of November. And as I said, the name of the exhibition is Reimagining Museums for Climate Action, and it was an international competition asking people to radically reimagine and redesign the museum as an institution in the climate change era. So I worked with Takuma in this video installation that is a provocation actually to the museum sector, to museum professionals. And it asks what would mean to confer museum status to Indigenous territories, especially Indigenous territories who have not yet been granted full property rights. So, and it's a 13-minute video that has Takuma and other Indigenous collaborators as well. There's a stunning animation there from another Indigenous artist called Denilson Baniwa. And there are quotes from Indigenous activists and leaders from Brazil as well. And the installation makes a parallel between the official definition of what is a museum and what is a museum, you know, and what is the role that Indigenous territories have in comparison to those definitions, because everything is there. You know, museums and Indigenous territories they bring together the past and possibilities of the future. They safeguard heritage for all people and future generations. They are not for profit. So the installation is a provocation for us to rethink, you know, do we need to create new buildings? Do we need to have museums in big cities? Or actually, we have it all there, but we are looking maybe at a different direction. Is a museum more useful for climate action than an Indigenous territory? I think that is the central question. Is it?
Yeah.
I'm confident that it's not. And I think this is the provocation. And it's a crazy idea, but it's the intention behind is to inspire other museum professionals to rethink their practices, because the practices of, you know, Indigenous work in museums is, you know, very often deeply problematic. And it's a call for the museum sector, for museums and creative practitioners, curators, to actually engage in the fight of those local communities for their lands, for their rights. You know, I think we can be better allies of those communities if we had a deeper connection and a deeper relationship with those communities. So this installation is one of 8 other installations in this exhibition, which is really incredible. It's really creative and imaginative.
When is it going to be available?
Yeah. So this video will be made available at the Google Arts and Culture app. I think during the COP26. So I think it's going to happen between the 1st of November and the 21st. The 1st and the 21st of November. And not just my clip, but all of the other 8 exhibits, all of the works of this exhibition will be made available there. And I hope that this installation is an ongoing work, is not a sort of finished film. At the moment, the video is very educational because it is at the Glasgow Science Centre. There is a public that is, children, family, and science folk, science-oriented schools, and so I think the film is it was created for that specific audience and for the limitations of the space that we were giving as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not how the work will be showcased in different venues or in different iterations. So I think it's that video is a phase 1 only. I think there will be other questionings, there will be other ideas, there will be other footage that we want to be refreshing and rethinking the way that we tell those stories, those concerns that we bring, and those ideas that we bring in the video. I think we're gonna rework for different spaces. I want to translate into Portuguese and have it in Brazil in an exhibition. I have lots of ideas of how I want to exhibit it, and my ideas my initial ideas of the physicality of the work, I wanted to be an immersive experience, but because of COVID and because of the limitations of the space, we could not deliver in the way that I wanted it to be. So it ended up being a video, which is fantastic for a science museum as it is. It's really interesting display for that. But I think I believe in a more, I believe that I want it to be more sensorial and more immersive and relaxing. And, I think there are other elements that I want to bring to the experience that are not, that you cannot experience in the display right now. So that's why I don't want to make the video available on YouTube or on different platforms. It will be during COP, because this video is for COP26. It is about a specific provocation for museum professionals to rethink their engagement with Indigenous communities during COP26, during the most important. This COP has the potential to be the most important event of our generation, So I think it's specific for that. But you're nodding, Wei.
I was just relating really hard to this, to your point where you don't want to make something like that available for anybody all of the time. You want people to experience it in the way that you want to experience it. You don't want someone to be on the toilet on their iPhone watching your having a poo and
why on the toilet?
I don't know. It's sorry. I have that
actually,
kind of
the more
humor,
people please watch it in the toilet, the more people watch, the more informed people are about it.
That's a very private place, though. So that's very immersed.
Cleansing the mind whilst cleansing the body at the same time. I really,
but there is an element of the experience that I think it being immersive. It's like going to a museum or watching an exhibition on the phone. We experienced both on during the pandemic, isn't it? It is a different experience. It is a different. You have a different take on it. So I think that the work it functions really well for these exhibits, for the purpose of that exhibit, for that display, but it's not a definite work. It's not the end of that work. That's what I mean. So I want to do other iterations. I don't want to define that work by how it looks or right now. I want to take it to a different level over the next years. Yeah, it makes sense.
And when you talk about sensorial and how you want people to experience things, are we talking sort of the rainforest, or is it more about village life? What kind of sites and what kind of centers do you want to?
I think this is something very personal. I think in a way that, for example, when I went to the village, this 3 times that I went to the village, you can experience you are entering a different time. There is a different sense of time. There is a different sense of belonging. There is a different sense of you are immersed in a very different place. Time runs in a different way. That puts you into a space or a place where you are more open to meet the other, to understand, there is that, you feel like a foreigner in a way, and you're more open to feel things differently. I felt myself very differently every time that I was there, and it is a life-changing experience for me. But I think that it's very different when you go to a museum and see something for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I think you need that time of relaxation. You need that time to enter, to discover, to feel, to be surprised, to be challenged, to think critically. And I think that that's what I want to explore, I think, because I think that the video can have a different, those questions that I bring in the installation can have a different impact if it's displayed in a different way. And the language that I used on the captions right now, they are also very focused for that audience in the museum, for that public, So I think that if, for example, that work, if it was a work that was shown at the Venice Biennale, for example, it would be a completely different iteration, editing, video. The questions are the same, but I would have worked differently. Yeah. So I think that's what I want to say. It's not a definite piece of work as it is right now. And I think that if I am allowed and if I'm granted an opportunity to have that journey for you to get to the video, and the video is the footage that Takuma did for the video is so amazing, so cinematic, because what he does is he documents things from his perspective. It's his camera looking in the eye of another indigenous person. It's a kind of shot that if you're not an indigenous filmmaker, you're not going to get. You don't see. There is that. He is representing his people. He's telling that this is how I want to tell the story, and I think that it deserves. I think his images deserve a good showcase, a good experience. I think it's also a respecting the work that he's doing as well. And there is some footage, for example, in the video, in the installation, of the fires and that hit the Xingu last year as well. And that so there is like incredible footage of him, so distressing, of him with his mobile phone. He wasn't with his camera because they were there to fight the fire. And he was like documenting the journey of those firemen. When I mean firemen, it's not the firemen. It's the community volunteers that were trying to save trying to fight the fire so it doesn't get close to their houses. So it was like them on their own hands and with the equipment that they have available fighting the fire. It is so impactful. It's so, and in a way so beautiful as well. It's inspiring at the same time that is so shocking. Yeah, I think I would be very happy if people had the opportunity to see that. And it's one thing for us to see what's going on, the fires in the Amazon, and another thing is to see an indigenous person filming their community fighting for it in a moment that nobody can enter the community because of the pandemic. Nobody can be there. They are isolating. So I think there are those layers of meaning that I think are very interesting for people to see.
And these are kind of the Amazon fires that people were talking about, sort of posting all over the internet, sort of last year, the year before last year.
Like it happens every year, but it's getting worse and worse and worse with the current government, with Bolsonaro's government.
The Ignoramus's Guide to Surviving Humanity is available as a podcast on Spotify and Amazon Music.
You can also like and subscribe to our videos on YouTube. And if you want to help us grow, then you can become a patron on Patreon. And that's it, right? I think that's it.
Yeah.